In this part, we will be dealing with and summarizing the third and the last chapter of the text Heart of Darkness. We will be looking at some of the important parts of chapter 3. Now, chapter 3 begins with the arrival of the steamboat steered by Marlowe at the inner station where Kurtz lives. Their arrival at the end of chapter 2 is described in the following words, I quote: "Through my glasses, I saw the slope of a hill interspersed with rare trees and perfectly free from undergrowth. A long decaying building on the summit was was half buried in high grass. The large holes in the peaked roof gaped black from afar. The jungle and the woods made a background." So this is the structure on the summit, which is supposed to be Kurtz's residence, the place where he lives. And we can all make out from the few lines that I have read that it is in a dilapidated and a very bad condition. The party on the steamboat is greeted in the at the inner station by a person who is given the name of the Harlequin. This man, the Harlequin, who remains unnamed, like the long line of characters from the beginning to the last, this Harlequin is originally of Russian descent. He can be understood to be a quintessential wanderer who ran away from his home at a very young age and traveled in Russian and in English ships. Uh, his importance lies in two or three things. Number one, he is supposed to be an admirer, an acolyte, or a follower of Kurtz. As far as this place is concerned, he can be seen to be someone who is very close to Kurtz. You will find it interesting that this man is described in the following words, the Harlequin. And by the way, Harlequin used to be a comic character in conventional plays who was identified uh, from his colorful, gaudy dresses. And this character also wears a very gaudy dress which is covered with colorful patches. If I am quoting, if the absolutely pure, uncalculating, unpractical spirit of adventure had ever ruled a human being, it ruled this bepatched youth. I almost envied him the possession of this modest and clear fame. It seemed to have consumed all thought of self so completely that even while he was talking to you, you forgot that it was he, the man before your eyes, who had gone through these things. I did not envy him his devotion to Kurtz. Now, this man is devoted to Kurtz. He's a follower of Kurtz. He's an acolyte of his. The importance of the Harlequin lies in the fact that he is presented as a quintessential wanderer who has been wandering aimlessly and without any ulterior motive from one place to another till he reached the inner station and became enamored with the character of Kurtz and began to live there full of devotion for Kurtz. Now, the second thing which is important with regard to the Harlequin is that Kurtz now, for a very long period in this chapter, we get to see Kurtz through the eyes of the Harlequin, because he's somebody who has been living close to Kurtz. There are so many important things which reach us through Harlequin, and we get a much clearer picture about Kurtz. The importance of this chapter also lies in the fact that some of the unanswered questions which have remained in the mind of the reader while reading chapter 1 and chapter 2 are answered here. So the things and events that transpire in this chapter can be linked with some of the enigmatic and some of the unanswered questions which have remained in the mind of the reader. So the first thing that we come to know through this man, the Harlequin, is that Kurtz wields a lot of power in this region. He is a very, very powerful figure. However, the power that he wields and he exercises cannot be understood as worldly authority. Rather, it dawns upon the reader that his control over this region and the people living here can be understood in terms of the fact that he seems to have caught the imagination of the of the natives uh, who happen to be the denizens of this region. The power that Kurtz exercises here can also be finds a manifestation in a spectacle which greets Marlowe and which is very startling in nature. I am quoting. There are poles surrounding the hut on the summit, which we have just read about. On these poles, there are some objects fixed on the top, which initially Marlowe thinks were some ornamental pieces. However, a little later in the chapter, he discovers, to his amazement, surprise, that these round knobs were not ornamental but symbolic. They were expressive and puzzling, striking and disturbing, food for thought, and also for the vultures if there had been any looking down from the sky. Now, what are these? These are actually decapitated heads some uh, of some victims of Kurtz who have been sacrificed, beheaded to satisfy the whims or the some of the strange, urges. We will link this with some very important facts which we will be discussing later on. So these are the start back I had given was really nothing but a movement of surprise. I had expected to see a knob of wood there. I returned deliberately to the first I had seen, and there it was, black, dried, sunken, with closed eyelids, a head that seemed to sleep at the top of the hole. So, this sight, this spectacle, is of an expository nature. It is symbolic for the reader also because it tells us so much about Kurtz. Kurtz has become a kind of a demigod, a deity. We get hints in the text that sacrifices are offered to him, and he presides over some arcane mysterious rites and ceremonies along with the natives. So he has begun to uh, have unlimited powers. He has begun to control the people residing in these uh, regions. So, this is the information that reaches us through the Harlequin and through Marlowe's own observations of his surroundings once he reaches the inner station. So Kurtz is worshipped by the natives, the chiefs, the tribes, and he has become, as I said, a deity, a kind of a demigod. Now, this has to be linked with Kurtz's background as an embodiment of European learning, as a gifted individual, as somebody who epitomizes European learning and as well as modern civilization. Then, as I said, some unanswered questions which have remained in the mind of the reader are answered in this through some vital pieces of information which we receive through the Harlequin. Harlequin reveals that the rescue of Kurtz from the inner station has been a very, very complicated affair. On the way to the inner station, there have been so many impediments on the way. At the outset, the steamer had sunk, so it took so many months to repair the steamer to begin the journey, and we could also discern a plot at the company station, at the at the place where the manager and his uncle resided, that which there were clear signals that there is a plot to delay Kurtz's rescue. But now more dimensions are added to this. Okay, we are told that the attack on the steamboat, which took place some 8 miles from the inner station, had been ordered by Kurtz. So this kind of gives us, this is indicative of the fact that Kurtz is reluctant to leave. He does not want to leave this place. So his presiding over this region as a very powerful figure, and his powerful stature as some kind of a demigod. Then second, his reluctance to leave this place even though he is terribly ill. Okay, and thirdly, we are also told, or we are we receive, there are suggestions in the text which tell us that the natives do not want Kurtz to leave. This can be linked with the clamor of wailing and noises which was heard through the mist some 40 kilometers from the inner station. So, all these unexplained things are gradually brought to light, and the picture is made quite clear before the reader. The last thing which the Harlequin tells Marlowe is that Kurtz has been very, very ill, that he himself has nursed Kurtz through two major illnesses. Now, after this, a little later in the same chapter, Kurtz is brought finally on the steamboat, okay, lying on a stretcher. Okay, so and he is lodged in a small cabin in the steamboat. So we can say the final stage of his rescue has finally come, and he's uh, he's brought on the steamer to be taken back to the place where he belongs. But soon after this, on the same night, after the midnight hour, when Marlowe suddenly enters his cabin, he discovers that Kurtz has run away. So here I will quote a few lines for you. As soon as I got on the bank, now he's run away, okay? He's missing, he's not there, okay? Before this, there is a line. I glanced casually into the little cabin. A light was burning within, but Kurtz was not there. So he understands that there is some lure, some temptation, something that is taking, or that is acting as a huge temptation for Kurtz, and he has run away from the steamboat. But the, this sight of Kurtz running is not a normal sight of a healthy person running on his two legs. No. As soon as I got on the bank, I saw a trail, a broad trail through the grass. I remember the exultation with which I said to myself, he can't walk. He is crawling on all fours. I have caught him. So this kind of looks to be quite a contradiction, because Kurtz till now has been described in very lofty terms as an apostle of learning, apostle of progress, an embodiment of European learning. And here you see Kurtz crawling on all fours, trying to enter the wilderness where some drums are being beaten and some fires have been lit up, and people wearing horns on their heads are dancing. So Kurtz is going there. Finally, he chases Kurtz and he hunts him down, and there is a small conversation between the two of them. Kurtz tells him, go away, hide yourself. Of course, Marlowe refuses to do this. Then Kurtz, resisting uh, being taken away by Marlowe, says, I had immense plans. He muttered irresolutely. Yes, said I, but if you try to shout, I'll smash your head with. So he threatens Kurtz, and finally he takes him back to the steamboat on his back. There is during this a a line, a statement which kind of strikes you as very important. Marlowe says that his intelligence was clear, but his soul was mad. He had succumbed to some monstrous passions, some primal urges, some animal instance, let us link this to a very, very important passage where this side of Kurtz's personality is described in a beautiful way. Mr. Kurtz lacked restraint in the gratification of his various lusts, and there was something wanting in him, some small matter which, when the pressing need arose, could not be found under his magnificent eloquence. Whether he knew of this deficiency himself, I can't say. I think the knowledge came to him at last, only at the very last. But the wilderness had found him out early and had taken on him a terrible vengeance for the fantastic invasion. I think it had whispered to him things about himself which he did not know, things of which he had no conception till he took counsel with the great solitude. And the whisper had proved irresistibly fascinating. It echoed loudly within him because he was hollow at the core. Now, of course, this description of Kurtz is in itself quite eloquent because it describes the dehumanization, the, the degradation, the corruption and debasement of Kurtz. Kurtz has to be distinguished from other characters who remain nameless. These characters had come to Africa for some petty material, greed. Okay, they were merely avaricious, greedy people who wanted to make a quick buck or to earn some money. But Kurtz has been throughout the text held as a man of preeminence who is, as I said, who epitomizes European learning. He is a gifted person who can speak very effectively, who can write well, who can paint, and who did not come here ostensibly just for some petty material gains. He came here with some lofty ideals related to the progress of humanity. So, who is responsible for the degradation and the dehumanization of Kurtz? This is a question about which we will have something to say very shortly. But before that, Kurtz dies soon after this. Okay. He at one place he says, "This is the steamer once again breaks down, and that is the end of Kurtz's, you know, determination to live. He mentally gives up, and the only thing which remains is for him to uh, die." So, but before he dies, there is a small scene about which I will once again read from the text. Marlowe observes that once the steamer breaks down, Kurtz seems to have surrendered. He seems to have given up. All his resilience, comes, breaks down. Anything approaching the change that came over his features I have never seen before and hope never to see again. Oh, I wasn't touched, I was fascinated. It was as though a veil had been rent. I saw on that ivory face the expression of somber pride, of ruthless power, of craven terror, of an intense and hopeless despair. Did he live his life again in every detail of desire, temptation, and surrender during that supreme moment of complete knowledge? Now, this is immediately before he dies, the moment of supreme knowledge, the final moments of his life when Marlowe feels that he lived his life again, looked at his life, looked back at the things he had done, the things that had happened to him, and he has just two words to say, and these words we can say mark the culmination of this narrative. The words are the horror. And soon we receive the news from one of the manager's men that Mr. Kurtz, he dead. Mr. Kurtz is dead. This is how we finally see Kurtz's end at the end of the novel. Now, at this point, we return to the question that which seems to be closely related with the theme of the text, that who is responsible for Kurtz's dehumanization, okay? His succumbing to monstrous passions, his, you know, getting absorbed in the life of the native Africans, which is visualized as a life which is uncivilized. So, the first thing which I want to draw your attention to is that you perceive an ambiguity in relation to Kurtz. One thing is very clear, that Marlowe has disgust for him. Okay, he condemns Kurtz more than probably everyone else. He has a condemnatory approach towards Kurtz. But at the text, at an unconscious level, seems also at the same time to glorify Kurtz through the impressions we receive about him from the various characters and from the fear and adoration which various characters express in relation to Kurtz. So it is from within this ambiguity of condemnation and adoration that we have to find the meaning of Kurtz's personality and his life. Now, at this level, let us try to decode the texts or even Marlowe's view about the colonial system, okay, about the modern civilization, because colonial system was a method ostensibly. The justification of the colonial system was in its in its objective, in its mission to civilize the world. Now there is in the text a covert justification of colonial system in the fact that the text, as well as when we consider Marlowe's perspective, it seems that Marlowe seems to equate humanity with modern civilization. So when we say this, we say that Marlowe does not see anything which lies outside modern civilization as human or humanizing. So these cultures, for instance, the culture and life, okay, the society of Africa, is projected as a primordial and uncivilized society. Now, this is the main problem of the text. The text seems to polarize the world into areas of light and areas of darkness, and Africa is shown as an area of darkness. In Europe, modern civilization has been able to humanize the human species. But those places where modern civilization has not reached are equated with darkness, are given a primordial and a primitive character, and are shown to be full of savagery and subhuman life. This you can connect with the descriptions of Africans, the African landscape and the wilderness. Okay, this becomes quite evident in Marlowe's description of all these. things. So, in short, that we can say that since this text has been condemned as a racist text, it has been criticized as a particularly by Chinua Achebe in his famous address called "The Image of Africa," because we can say that the novel seems to take a Eurocentric uh, view because it does not show an eclectic approach to life. By eclectic approach, we mean that you look at the human life, human societies, the world, and the earth as a place where different cultures exist or coexist at the same time, and every culture has its own cultural specificities. But quite contrary to this view, this text polarizes the world into the areas of light and areas of darkness. And thus, we can say that the uh, Kurtz's, Kurtz's regression into darkness, Kurtz's regression into a life where he seems to succumb to some primal urges, some animal instincts, some monstrous passions, can be equated with a regression of a modern man into the dark regions of what can is described through psychoanalytical term as the area of unconscious area of id, the untamed region of the consciousness, okay, which is not controlled by the consciousness, the ego. Okay, so it is a journey into the earliest times. It is also a journey of a modern man within himself, and we can at the end say that if there is the dehumanization of Kurtz is the greatest as compared to the other characters. Okay, he is shown to be, reduced to a beast. When you see him crawling, he has lost control over himself. He has lost all self control. So the uh, degradation, the dehumanization of Kurtz is the greatest as compared to the other character. And the responsibility, okay, he becomes a slave to animal primordial instincts that the civilized man seems to have tamed and controlled. So if the text is a test of the European ideals outside Europe, we say that Kurtz fails the test. He is consumed by the dark place, the dark area, the dark region. And as I said, in psychoanalytical terms, it is a regression into the regions of the unconscious mind called the id. Thank you.